The chief executive brought up several concerns before the UN General Assembly and urged industrialized countries to lead the way in ensuring that global action towards mitigating the effects of climate change are continued. The president even tackled a sensitive issue and bravely condemned Asian hate acts and racism that unfortunately still prevail in many parts of the world to this very day. Alan Francisco fills us in with the details in this report.
And today, on behalf of 110 million Filipinos, at this time of crisis and opportunity, I bring with me the spirit of their enduring commitment to the ideals of our United Nations.
That was part of the opening speech of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. One of his focus was on the issue of climate change, which he identified as the heaviest threat to the world and people. For the President, this global problem requires a collective effort led by the United Nations. And although the Philippines is one of the smallest contributors of carbon dioxide emissions, the Chief Executive pointed out that our country is one of the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change.
The effects of climate change are uneven and reflect an historical injustice. Those who are least responsible suffer the most. The Philippines, for example, is a net carbon sink. We absorb more carbon dioxide than we emit. And yet, we are the fourth most vulnerable country to the effects of climate change.
That's why President Marcos Jr. reminded industrialized countries on their obligation under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement to cut their greenhouse gas emissions and others in the fight against climate change.
To cut their greenhouse gas emissions, provide climate financing and technology transfer for adaptation for the most vulnerable and developing countries. To lead by example. We look forward to concrete outcomes at the Conference of Parties in Egypt later this year.
President Marcos also stressed the need for nations to invest in food security to reduce the emerging global food security crisis.
To attain food self-sufficiency and security, we are providing innovative solutions and financial support to farmers and fisherfolk to adapt new technologies and connect to national and global value supply chains. We look forward to forging cooperation with the UN and our partners to boost agricultural productivity and food security.
Meanwhile, in the midst of challenges such as the pandemic, the President emphasized that the Philippines remains on track to achieve upper middle income status in the next year and further be moderately prosperous.
With steady investment in food, public health, education, and other social services, we expect to become a moderately prosperous country by 2040. I am confident that we will achieve this vision.
The Chief Executive also pointed out the importance of adhering to the rules-based international order in addressing disputes where disputes should be resolved peacefully.
By reinforcing the predictability and stability of international law, particularly the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, we provided an example of how states should resolve their differences through reason and through right. These two contributions provide useful guidance for our time. For amidst challenging global tides, an important ballast stabilizes our common vessel. That is our open, inclusive, and rules-based international order that is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and of justice. As I have underscored, the Philippines shall continue to be a friend to all and an enemy of none.
Meanwhile, President Marcos and United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres have also met. The Philippines is among the original 51 charter members of the UN since its establishment in 1945. The President will also have other bilateral meetings with other leaders of some countries. Alan Francisco, for The Nation, New York City, USA.